Are you ready for a career upgrade? One where you are valued and respected for your expertise, where you get to use your strengths every day, where you're doing work that matters, where you have healthy boundaries, and where you're paid really freaking well. And not only that, but you get to use your privilege to open doors and support others in their pursuit of their own upgraded careers. Well, if that sounds good, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Nicole Case, and after a decades long career in corporate HR, I'm sharing my behind the scenes insider knowledge on how you can upgrade your own career and succeed in this wild corporate world. Each episode will have practical, actionable takeaways that you'll be able to implement right away with some healthy doses of encouragement and maybe a kick in the pants or two. Plus, you'll hear from other amazing women who have upgraded their own careers on their terms. So pour yourself a favorite beverage and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back to the Upgraded Career Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Case. And if it's just hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or maybe even your year, just know that I'm here for you. Do you like that Friends reference? I hope you like that Friends reference because I like the Friends reference. Anyway, let's face it, work is hard. And there are periods of time where it just really sucks, right? Just lots of competing deadlines. Your coworkers are annoying. You don't have the proper tools or isn't enough clarity on what you should be doing. It's tough. Like I get it. And I hear this from my client every week, but how do you determine if it's just a tough season or a cycle in the business? And when is it really just time to go, right? And I know I personally can get very dramatic and tend to get bored really quickly in jobs and can be like, oh my God, I hate everything. This really sucks. I quit, blah, blah, blah. So very early in my career, I came up with just 3 questions to ask myself to help me think through, is this just a hard season and it's going to pass? And am I just being super dramatic and emotional and frustrated right now, which is okay. You're allowed to feel that. That's not a problem at all. Um, but is it that, or is it really time to move on? Right. So is it, how do you figure out if it's actually time to go or not? And so these are the 3 questions that, again, I kind of figured out really early in my career, thankfully. Otherwise, I'd be quitting jobs every day, right? And also what I share with my clients now is, 1, am I learning? 2, am I making an impact? And 3, am I having fun? So let's dive into each of these. So 1, am I learning? You know, learning is a really a lifelong journey. I think that continuing to learn is really central. It's a really central part to a fulfilling and satisfying career. And the economy and our industries are just moving so fast that we just have to keep our skills up to date, right? Like, holy cow, ChatGTP is going to make all of our jobs go away. No, that's not actually true. But who knows? Maybe we need to learn how to use AI and machine learning in our work. Maybe that's a skill we need to keep up to date on or whatever, right? Whatever that looks like for you. But I think that continuing to learn and to grow, no matter what your title is, no matter how long you've been in the workplace, no matter how many credentials you have and how many degrees you have, like I truly believe that continuing to learn and to grow in that way is really, really important to having that fulfilling and satisfying career. And so this could look like a couple of different things in your job. So it could literally look like formal classroom learning and training, right? Like you have access to a learning and a learning and development sort of program, or you have access to again, different like skills-based training courses. You might have budget to go outside and get training somewhere else, whether, it's taking a class at a university or getting a certification or something like that, or even, budget to go to a conference or something like that. Right. So it could really look like that formal sort of learning that a lot of us think of whenever we say learning, right. And continuing to learn and grow. But it could also just having time in your day to learn, right? So it's great if you have budget to go to conferences or budget to like take these training courses. But if you don't actually have the time to do it in your day, then you might not feel like you're able to actually learn, right? Like those are two things that need to happen. You actually have to have access to the training and you have to have the time, right? So having time in your day to learn and being really encouraged to make sure that you are continuing to grow and to gain new skills is important. This could also look like just being able to do new things on the job, right? So it's not just doing courses or getting certifications or anything like that. It might just be like I have exposure to new things, or I have the autonomy to, do things differently or change things up if I think that's the right thing. So you're able just to learn kind of on the job, or maybe you get a mentor or a buddy that can actually help train you in something different, or just again give you exposure to something different. This might look like getting a promotion, right? You might be ready for that next level. Maybe it's getting into people leadership for the first time, or maybe like a lot of my clients, stepping into that next level leader where, you're getting into that director, senior director, VP level, where leading an organization or leading a function is very different than just being a first line manager and leading a bunch of other individual contributors. Like again, stepping up to that next level of leadership is a very different skill set, lots of different things you need to consider and think about. So getting a promotion might be the way that you continue to learn and grow. It could also be a job rotation or a job sharing situation, or just maybe moving to a new department inside of your company. If you have the ability and access to be able to do that, that can be just, again, another great way to continue learning on the job, just by getting a job rotation, or just having the ability to move to a new department. And it could also mean maybe filling in for your boss. Maybe you have grown into being your boss's right hand, maybe your team lead, or again, you're just really grown to be that really critical part of the team. And so anytime your boss is either traveling or on vacation or whatever, that you're starting to take some things off of their plate again, which is also a really great way to position yourself for a promotion if that's something that you're after. But filling in for your boss could also be a really great way to learn and grow and be exposed to new things in your job. So that's learning. Are you continuing to learn and grow in the way that you want to learn and grow? The second question that I always ask myself and ask my clients is, am I making an impact, right? Am I doing work that matters? Or am I doing work that's directly related to the company goals? Or do I feel like I'm just sitting here and just doing a bunch of busy work or just paper pushing? Am I doing work that's truly impacting the bottom line? Now, it can be really tough when you are at a certain position in the company, or you're in a certain function that is not very easily directly tied to the bottom line. So, for instance, being in HR, like I was in my corporate career, I can tell you a whole host of metrics and a whole host of things that can certainly point to a healthy functioning business that totally correlates to having more revenue and more profit in your business. But it also can be kind of squishy and be kind of fuzzy, and sometimes it can be a little bit more challenging to, like, the specific work that I'm doing here is directly related to us getting more customers, right? It might be a little bit more challenging in your role to do that. But again, are you able to make an impact even in a small way, to say like, yes, I created this process, or I did this, or the project that I'm working on, again, makes life easier for everyone else. Therefore, everyone, the people in sales have the ability to close more deals a little bit more easily or a little bit faster, whatever, right? So, are you doing work that matters to you personally? That, like, yeah, I'm doing really great stuff in this world. Like, I'm impacting big things in this world. Now, we all don't have to work for nonprofits or NGOs, or we don't all have to, again, be school teachers or nurses or anything like that, you can very easily directly relate the work that you do back to improving somebody's life on an individual basis. But, are you doing work that you like and that's important to you, right? Or that you feel like, yeah, I'm overall making a difference in this world. Are you doing work that would continue even if you weren't there? So this is something that I grappled with a lot in my career because I had big ideas. I had lots of programs and processes that I wanted to put into place. And a lot of times I had the autonomy to do that, which I thought was really great. That, I had the ability to be like, yeah, Nicole, if that's what you want to do, or if you think that's the right way to approach this, go for it. But then it would make me wonder, if I left, would that work continue without me? And that's not to say that in the moment that the work wasn't super valuable and that it didn't impact the company in a really big way. And that it's just, there just wasn't someone that had that same passion or had that same idea or that same vision for how they wanted to impact the business. That doesn't negate all of the important work that you did. So it makes me think back to, when I was at a really large tech company. I created a new employee assimilation program, a year-long program for new college grad engineers. So we were seeing a lot of attrition, really high attrition rates with our engineers that we were hiring right out of college. And on some level that's normal, right? Like you're gonna have to allot for that, because somebody coming out of college, it's normal for them to kind of, come into a company and bounce after a year or two, or decide, I'm gonna move to a different city, or, they decide that that's not the work that they want to do. And you just don't know that until you get into it, right? So some of that's normal. But the feedback that I was hearing was that, people didn't feel connected. People didn't know, the company was really big. People didn't know who other people were, the other departments were. They weren't getting FaceTime with some of the leaders to like really feel connected to this broader organization. So I came up with this year long assimilation program for them, where we had events once a month. We brought in speakers. There was projects that they worked on. It was really cool. And I developed this program over the course of 3 years and grew it across the U.S. and started it over in India as well, where we had another really large engineering population. And I don't after I left the company, I don't think they kept up with it. Like I don't think they kept it going. And that's okay. And that's not to say that like it wasn't important at the time. And I'm sure there's something else that they're doing today. But at that time, I felt like I was doing really, really important work that matters. I was directly impacting the company goals and the bottom line, because I was reducing attrition of that particular population. And as we all know, it's very expensive to continue to rehire people. So the small budget that I had to support that program, I think really went a long way. But I'm not gonna lie, it does feel like a little bit of a bummer that that program didn't continue after I had left that organization. But again, it's really important to think, hey, is the work that I'm doing here, if I just stopped doing it, would anyone notice? That might be an indicator that maybe you're spinning your wheels on some work that's just not super important, especially if it's not important to you. If you're like, I really don't like doing this thing. And I know that if I left, they wouldn't continue doing it, or they would replace me with a tool or something like that, then that's something to be thinking about and something to look into. Are you getting positive feedback from your coworkers, your boss, and your customers? What are people saying about the work that you're doing? Are they telling you flat out that you're making an impact, right? Sometimes again, we can get so deep down into our own work and in our own heads that we kind of lose sight of the bigger picture, and that, yeah, the work that we are doing is making a really big difference. So just really take a look around and think through that. Like, are you getting that positive feedback from your coworkers and or your customers? Um, this is something that I'm also ends up being a real sticking point with my clients, because a lot of my clients come to me again looking for that promotion, looking for that next level, and they often feel so underutilized. So again, like, are you making an impact at work? Are people utilizing your strengths, utilizing the skills that you have? Are you able to lean into your strengths every day and be able to do work that feels good to you, not draining to you again? And I believe that if you are able to utilize your strengths at work on a daily basis, you are going to be making a bigger impact. You are going to be able to show up and perform even better because you're doing stuff that that matters and feels really good for you to do, right? Otherwise, it's going to be incredibly draining. And again, so many of my clients come to me and they are like, I've been ready for that promotion. I've been ready for that next step. They're just not utilizing my skills or just utilizing me to my fullest potential. Now, the question that I would also ask here is, have you had a conversation with your leadership team or with your boss about the skills that you have or the type of work that you want to be doing? Make sure that you're having those conversations, kind of on the surface though, think about, are you being utilized to for your fullest potential here in this role? And again, are you doing cool work that matters? Like, just like blanketly, are you doing cool work that you're like, yeah, this is fun. I enjoy this. Um, and because I truly believe that if we have people that are doing work that they believe matters and that's cool and that they enjoy doing, if we're going to be at work for a third of our lives or a third of our time, right? Let's make that meaningful aside from just our paychecks, right? We also want to be paid like really, really well, but we also just want to make sure that what we're doing makes a difference, right? If we're going to spend if we're going to spend so much time in our jobs, at our work, away from our families and away from other work that might also be really meaningful or other volunteer opportunities or be in our communities, let's make it meaningful and let's make it worth it. Again, aside from our paychecks, because that's also important. And finally, the last question to ask yourself, if you're just kind of like, I'm not really sure, is this just a rough period of time or is it just truly time to move on? Am I having fun? Dare we have fun at work, right? Like, do you literally enjoy what you're doing? Is like, not to say, like, I don't want to go so far as to say, like, oh, if you weren't being paid, would you still do this work? Like, if that is true, that you would still do this work even if you weren't being paid, that's awesome. That's amazing. That's a really great place to be. But I don't always believe that it has to be that. I think sometimes we put so much pressure on our jobs to be the end all be all of fulfillment in our lives that it ends up being really unrealistic, or we end up getting really disappointed whenever our job isn't that. Um, but I still think that it's important that you like what you do, right? Like, it's still important that you like what you do. And it's important to think about, do you like your colleagues? Do you like your boss? Do you like the customers that you serve? I think this is something that not everybody thinks about, particularly if you're customer facing and you're in a customer facing role. Do you like that population of individuals? Do you like the type of customers and the type of people that you are interacting with on a day-to-day basis, right? So again, do you like what you're doing? Do you like your colleagues? Do you like your boss? Do you like your customers? Because if you do, then that can sometimes make a really challenging period of time in the business, or, even just work that might feel like a slog sometimes. You can still feel like you are having fun. You're having a good time. I have I do corporate training, corporate leadership training. And one of the cool things about that is that I get to go into industries that I don't typically have experience in. My corporate HR background is in the tech and the biotech and pharma space. And so when I do these trainings, I'm often going into manufacturing organizations or nonprofits or municipalities. And I've just been so pleasantly surprised to see people who are literally processing fish, raw fish for a food company, and they're in there having a great time. They're having so much fun. Like, are people like passionate about fish? Probably not. Are people like super passionate about creating, smoked salmon for people's brunches? Maybe not. Like, I don't know if anybody like wakes up and be like, oh yeah, like I'm super passionate about building faucets, right? Like again, like your work doesn't always have to be fulfilling in that way, or always like feel super passionate about your work. But if you have colleagues, if you have a boss, if you have customers, if you have the people that you interact with on a day-to-day basis, if that's fun, that makes the job so much easier and so much more enjoyable, right? But the thing is there time for fun at work? I mean, again, I think having fun at work is um, a huge part of, again, having a fulfilling and satisfying career. But if you don't have time for it, if you don't have time to like, go out to lunch every once in a while, or if you don't have time to do some team building activities, that might be an indicator that, if we're not actually carving out the time, even though we know we're all busy, we've all got a million different priorities. Like we do have to, not only do we have to take time off, we need to make sure that we're giving ourselves the space and the ability to take time off. We also need to carve out that time to have a little bit of fun with each other as well. Um, are you able to, again, cut loose a little bit and not take yourself so seriously? Once again, unless you are working in the medical field that you are literally saving people's lives, you are on the front lines of, again, first responder sort of a situation, you know, the the stakes of the work that you're doing are probably just a little bit lower, right? Not to say, again, this is not to um, say that people's work isn't important, or that you could connect the dots to saving some people's lives, right? Again, like I worked in the clinical research field for a while, and we're literally creating drugs, life-saving drugs for people, right? We're doing research on how to cure cancer and curing um you know really, really rare disease, right? Like that's important work. And again, we're talking about people's lives here. So again, that's important work. But if you're a project manager, like, you are not physically the person saving people's lives, which means you can dial that back just a little bit. That intensity, you can dial it back just a little bit, and you're able just to maybe not take yourself so seriously that like your nervous system is always operating like way up here, right? So are you able to, again, carve out that time to have fun? Are you able to, not take yourself so seriously all the time? Maybe most of the time you need to take yourself seriously. But are there times where you can, relax a little bit and again, just kind of bring the nervous system down just a little bit in your team? And again, this can be just a great stress reliever because, again, I don't care what industry that you're in. It can be, producing rainbows and roses, for puppies, right? But it's still going to be stressful. Our jobs are tough, things are stressful. Just society right now is stressful. Everything's stressful, right? So if we can have a little bit of fun in our day-to-day work, then this can be also a really great stress reliever. So those are the 3 questions to ask yourself to determine if it's time to move on or not. Again, things aren't always going to be perfect. So there are going to be times where you are able to check the box in 1 or 2 of these areas, but not often are all 3 of those boxes checked at the same time. And that's okay. And that's normal. And so, like, you might be bored and not growing or learning, but that might be okay for your season of life, right? Like, believe me, I wish I had a boring job when I was trying to launch this business. And I talked to some other business owners about this, about like, how do you get going? When you have a full time job, and it's like, you know what? If you have a boring job, that's actually great. Or maybe you are in the thick of caregiving or something like that. And just, you know what? It's okay that I'm not growing or learning right now because I need to reserve that brain space and that brain power for some other things that are going on in my life. And that is totally okay. Um, you might be feeling like you're doing just busy work or maintenance or automation in your job, and you're not feeling like you're making that big of an impact with the specific things that you're working on right now. And again, that's okay and needed too. Like we need to take time to optimize current processes or things in our role. And those projects don't always feel super impactful to the bigger picture, but they really are long term. I actually had a client who used to say that year 1 in a job is just learning the thing. Year 2 is just doing the actual thing, and year 3 is optimizing the thing. So again, you may feel like, okay, I'm not doing really important work, or maybe you're really early in your career and you're just like, I am just pushing paper here. I'm doing really boring stuff. And that's okay. Sometimes we just kind of have to put that time in and use the rest of our brain power to be really observing what's going on around us. So like we're able to connect the dots throughout the entirety of the organization. So, and when we do that, oftentimes we are able to kind of pull out some of the impactful things that we're doing. And also, let's face it, work is not always fun. It's often not fun, right? But there is a difference between we don't have enough team outings, or we don't have time to like sit and shoot the shit before meetings or whatever. Or I don't want to because I don't like these people that I work with. Like there's a difference between, you know what, we're not getting enough team building opportunities, or we're not having enough pizza parties or happy hours or whatever, and a toxic work environment. Like those are like two different things, right? That's a little bit different. So actually, if you want, listen back to the last two episodes that we just did, episode 16 and episode 17 on burnout and toxic work environments for kind of that information. Because, you know, there's a difference between like, you know what, we're just in a busy season right now, or we're just really heads down right now. There's not a lot of time for fun. And that's just a quick period of time. And again, a long-term toxic work environment, that's a little bit different. So again, this kind of three-footed stool can be a little off balance for a while, but it really can't long term. So that's when you know that it's time to go. So I would hear from my clients that they love their job, but it's just not fun anymore, or it's boring, or they're not doing the work that really lights them up, and they're really upset by this, which is normal. There is a level of grief that comes with knowing that it's time to move on, because maybe you love your customers, but you don't like the company that you work for, or you love your team, but you are bored out of your mind. You're ready to pull your eyeballs out. And you just know that there's just no more room to grow. So if you get to the end of this exercise and you think that, yeah, it might be time to move on, I would offer you one more step before making the decision to kind of launch into a full on job search. I would ask you if you've had this conversation with your boss, or anyone that you work with, about kind of how you're feeling, because they might be able to help you. They might not realize how you're feeling. So often I would hear from employees on their way out the door that they were just so miserable, but they didn't say anything because they didn't think that anything could have changed, when in reality, it could have. We could have done a job rotation. We could have maybe changed a process or something like that, or switched up a client group or something like that. But we have to ask first. Of course, you need to feel comfortable and feel safe in asking those questions and having those conversations, and having an open and trusting um, relationship with your boss and your colleagues. Obviously helps make that conversation a little bit easier. But that would just be one thing that I would offer to you to kind of think through is, you know, have you explored all avenues here to kind of fix some of these things? You know, again, if you're not feeling like you're learning, is it time for a promotion? Is it time to see a different side of the business? Whatever, maybe you have that conversation. If you feel like you're not making an impact, again, talk to your boss about that, because I promise you that your boss wants you to be making an impact. Your boss wants you to be doing good work. Your boss does not want you spinning your wheels or wasting time at work. Like, they want you to be doing stuff, right? So, you know, maybe you have that conversation to say, you know what, I don't think this process or this project, this is really important, or, you know, or maybe you just need more context or more information around it to truly understand. So again, maybe you have that conversation. Um, and I would also say, if you are a leader, you need to make sure you're asking these questions of your team. So making sure that you're checking in with them, and making sure that you know how they're feeling, so that either, again, you can help them make the changes that are needed, or explain that there's a light at the end of this tunnel, right? So um you know, or maybe even help them, again, find a different role internally if that's the right thing to do. Otherwise, you are going to be blindsided by attrition, or you're going to see the productivity and performance go down in your team. So again, you should be asking these three questions of yourself, but as a leader, you should also be proactively asking these questions of your team. Again, are they learning? Do they feel like they're making an impact, and do they feel like they're having fun at work? Those are the three simple questions for you to be asking yourself and asking your team, especially if you are not sure if this is just a tough season in your work, in your job, or is it truly time to go? So that's everything that I had for you today. Again, go on over to my website at NicoleKSpeaks.com/newsletter and sign up to get on my weekly newsletter where I share more content just like this. And you'll be the first to know when that new podcast episode drops, where you can hear me speak at next, and all kinds of other really important information for you to be super satisfied and successful in your job. So thank you all for tuning in today. And until next time, remember, your career deserves an upgrade.